Okay, let me begin this. Good morning, everybody. I thought to give a heads up today about the Indian Personal Data Protection Bill. Why I thought to present everybody because we are very close to pass the Personal Data Protection Bill for the India. All right. And I thought to give a thought to everybody, at least be ready from now onwards and start thinking about how Indian data privacy or data protection bill is going to impact to us as organizations and the team lead who are working for the project, how it's going to be effect. So I have taken very simple slide today. It's only just 10 slides here, but it's going to give a lot of thought today. So one thing I would like to put forward here, Indian personal data protection bill, the journey so far about the data privacy in India. So in 2017, the Puttaswamy has given a judgment, and that's where the right to the privacy as a fundamental right, the discussion started. And thereafter, you see in the 2018, the Justice B.N.C. Krishna has dropped the personal data protection bill. And thereafter has been many review. And on 16 December 2021, the bill was passed by the Joint Parliament Committee in the Parliament. And thereafter, the parliamentary members has given a lots of recommendations, a dissent note, and I got today itself we got the press release from the government side. Within 2 months, we are going to have a data protection bill in India. So this is a journey which is we are going forward now. Okay, before I start, there is certain questions to everybody's mind coming. Why India data protection bill has not been passed since we see the data protections around the world from the 2018, like GDPR has been from the 2018, and thereafter many country has passed the personal data protection bill. So the answer is very simple here. India is a growing economy. We have a lots of startup culture, startup nurturing here, and therefore lots of entrepreneur here who is and thereafter you see the back office like mostly from the US you see the back offices and here in India. So Indian government is thinking in a very a positive manner, whereas they have to save their digital transformation, digital economy, where they are growing like a startup is booming. You see a lot of unicorns being created within a past 5 years. So they are seeking a midway, a path to save their startup ecosystem and as well as should not harm to the MNC. All right. So that's where we see a delay of data protection bill, but this is going to be happening in reality soon. Now, other part I'm going to talk about a difference between other data protections bill and India data protection bill. India data protection bill is having a very wider scope. Why? Because we are going to include personal data and non-personal data both in the Indian personal data protection bill, and this is going to call so far our bill is going to be called as a data protection bill, not a personal data protection bill, because we are not going to only focus on the personal data. So thereafter, once the bill will pass, it will be called a data protection bill. And the second thing, what is our territorial scope and material scope? Uh, I just wanted to this part like the HR people and if we working with the Indian project, we have to understand wherever the Indian citizens is residing, or we are working for their a project, or we are targeting to the Indian citizens, then our Indian personal data, Indian data protection will be applicable. Like if the some of our NRI who's in the UK, in the Europe, and we are processing their data, they are still Indian citizens. So then Indian data protection will be applicable for us. And like for company like TNP India, since we are Indian, our salary being processed out in India, all right. So our HR has to start thinking about how they have to comply in terms of the data protections. So journey should start from now onwards. And the other part is like the Indian Data Protection Bill is going to give us as a citizen, as an enterprise, as an organization, a 24-month as a buffer period to implement the data protection bill. And that is going to be a stage-wise implementation phase. Like within 3 months, government has to form to the data protections authority. Thereafter, they have to form the tribunal. They have to appoint the judges. They have to appoint to the data protections officers, right? And thereafter, after 24th month grace period, they are going to start monitoring. And if we talk about non-personal data, personal data, everybody knows what are the personal data, like uh, my name, my email address, my phone numbers, my home address. These all falls under the personal data. But what about the non-personal data, where the Indian data protection will become much wider uh, uh, as compared to the other data protections bill? So like non-materials, when you say non-personal, like your intellectual property, your land records, so these all falls under the non-personal data. So when you connect with the non-personal data, probably you will figure out whose property is that. Right, so that's where our data protections will is much wider as compared to the GDPR and any other privacy law. Uh, Other aspect like a transparency, exactly the same what we have seen in the Europe in the GDPR. The same replica has been formed in Indian data protection bill as well. Like it is talking the same way, you have to have a lawfulness, fairness, and transparent. Purpose limitations, data minimizations. Also, you have to talk about the data minimization. Like only you have to collect the bare minimum data, what you required. Accuracy, storage limitation, and integrity and confidentiality, and accountability. So far, any questions anybody would like to ask, any doubts so far? No? So I hope everybody understand the scope about the Indian Data Protection Bill. Perfect. See, an Indian data protections will has, we don't talk about data controller here. Data controllers now call in Indian bill is a data fiduciary. The data processor exactly the same, like who process the data. Data fiduciary means like whose data being processed out, like public authority, legal entities, uh, government, I mean, agency bodies, like these are called the data fiduciary. Uh, Data processors, like the organization who processing on behalf of data fiduciary. A data principal like us, a natural persons like me, you, and everybody will fall as a data principal. And there's another terms called as a significant data fiduciary in Indian uh, data protection bill. So who process the in a large amount of data, they call is a significant data fiduciary like YouTube, Google, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. So these fall under the significant data fiduciary. Okay, and now I give something about the JPC recommendations. So what we have to do uh, as a, when we are going to comply to the Indian Data Protection Bill. So we have to have our own privacy policy, and privacy policy has to written well informed, saying that what data you collecting, why you collecting, what you're doing with that data, how long you're holding the data, and thereafter how you discarding the data. Right. So everything need to be written well and need to be published on your website. So every organization, like for us, the TNP India also need to have their privacy policy. And this is called privacy by design, which is not there in the GDPR, which is there in the GDPR, but in Indian privacy law has made this is a mandatory. So privacy by design policy need to be developed by the organizations in India. And it has to say that how secure you are developing your product, does your product and how secure your product is being used, the personal data or non-personal data, right? And this privacy by design policy need to be approved by DPA, which is going to be formed once the bill will pass, and which is not there in the Europe. So privacy by design, here you have to create your privacy by design policy and send for the DPA to the approval. And once it's approved, thereafter you can work on the privacy by design. Again, other aspect, like I will talk about the children policy. TNP India, however, we don't, our customers, our nature of work is not somewhere where we target to the children. But the gaming industry for them is is going to be one of the biggest challenge for the children policy. Right? Why? Because I am talking about in India, you attain the majority when you become 18 years. And GDPR says in Europe, you attain the majority when you are 13 years. Some of the countries said when you are 16 years, you attain the majority. In the US, mostly 16 years, you children attain a majority when they become 16 years old. Right. So, and here in India, if you're doing, if the children is signing the contract also is none and void because they are below 18 years. That's how our legislation has been formed. So to children policy need to be written well. And when you collecting or targeting to the children in India, uh, below than 18 years, you have to again you have to collect the parents' consent to process their data. And before 3 months, if they are going to attain to the to become a major, so before 3 months you have to inform well in advance to the minor. Having said that, you are going to be a major after 3 months, so provide your consent, and thereafter you are after 18 you are independent and you give your consent, so your parents consent is not. So children, to target to the children like gaming, you see the online educations, like there are many online education for them is going to be very challenging once the privacy law will pass in India. So children privacy policy need to be written well and has to have a parental consent. Significantly, data fiduciary, as I said, like YouTube, who is processing the volume and sensitive of personal data, turnover is laws, risk and harm resulting for any processing or any kind of processing undertaken, use of new technology and processing. So who process the large amount of data? That's fall under the significant data fiduciary. Any questions so far?
Yes, Saurabh.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, in privacy policy, actually, how long we can keep their personal data? Suppose it's a resume, it's a personal data, it's the personal contact information is there, and name is there, and the gender, everything is there. So how long we can hold their resume? Is it any rule like that? It's 1 year or 2 years, something like that?
Yeah, very good question. So, see, this information anyway, we are not going to publish in the privacy policy. Privacy policy, only things which we are going to publish. Having said that, we are collecting name, email address, phone numbers, right? But as you said, how long we are going to hold to the anybody's personal information, it
Yes,
all
yes.
depend on the contract which we are signing with the data fiduciary. If we are signing any contract with, like, suppose TNP France are signing the contract with the Wipro. So Wipro says that you have to work on our project for the 2 years, right? So 2 years we have to hold the data, and that's and how securely we are holding, and we have to explain that of how secure we are going to hold your data. We have to explain in that technical or organizational measure which we are putting in place, right? So this all depend on the contract which we are signing, and it if we are signing the contract with the individual, so it depend on the individual also. If individual giving consent, you have to hold by data for 3 months, 6 months. So that's how we have to hold the data.
In GDPR, is there any concern like that? It's 6 months only we can hold the resume, or 1 year, or like what you said, it's a contract thing.
See, it is all depend on the contract, but if you talk about the compliance perspective, which is in the Europe, is primarily all the organizations doing yearly basis they review their contract. Yearly basis they review their the contract, not contract, yearly basis they review the consumer rights. Consumer rights in the sense like what you target, what you is saying. I can make it out your questions. Like you're saying, if you have collected a resume, some of the candidate, right, and you collected that information, is immaterial. The candidates being selected are not selected, but you have to give him or his or her to option to opt out and clean out his data, right? So this is
Yes.
happening generally in a yearly basis to the in Europe, and that's the best practice we can follow. But however, in Indian data protection bill has not specified any timeline so far.
Okay, because we have one project with Cody. We are passing the resume actually. Okay,
Mm.
so in that we have to delete the resume after 6 months. 6 months or 1 year. I'm not remember
Yeah,
properly. So that is the reason I just asked this question.
yeah,
And one more thing. Suppose we are scraping the data from any channel, YouTube or Facebook or Instagram.
mm.
It's not containing any contact information. It's containing the YouTube channel name and the online details on it. I think that is not affecting anything this whole.
Yeah, yeah. If you're not
Yeah.
connecting any collecting any personal information, then it is not going to be affect you at all,
Yeah,
right?
this the rule is non-personal. It's related to land and what other holdings we have. Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, okay. Okay. Thanks, Saurabh. It's clear.
Yeah, see what I can say. You see, if the data which you are collecting, somewhere that data, if should just suppose I'm giving one example, if data being leak out, and someone can connect the data with the sum of the subset of the data, and thereafter can figure out the any personal information, then you have to be very aware, and you have to be cautious about that what data you keeping. So you have to put a complete a proper technical organization measure, whether it's the non-personal data or personal data. It should not be leak out and should not be put in the risk of anybody's hand, right? So that's how you have to be very careful about when you're processing the data. You got my point, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
Yes.
the one thing which you said about the you have to delete the data within 6 months, a year. I think the coding has asked you, and they have created their own standard. That is not the GDPR says you have to delete the data within a year. So
Okay.
they are
Maybe. Yeah.
coding is
Maybe.
following the best practices.
Yes. Yes. Maybe.
Perfect. Uh, Okay, and the other thing which is not in the GDPR is called the sandbox. Sandbox is the one of the terminology which is the Indian data protection bill is talking about. It is not there in the GDPR. Why? Because as I in the beginning I said, India is a startup ecosystem. Within the last 5 years, we have created many startup and unicorn. So Indian government also thinking not to kill to the startup ecosystem. So for to keep with that startup system and keep alive the startup system, they have come the idea called sandbox. So sandbox is the idea where you have to get the approval. I'm sorry, you have to get the approval for the 12 month first to you to use the sandbox, and whereas you can use the personal data, sensitive personal data, and non-personal data, and you have to submit the entire report. You have to submit the document how you're going to use the sandbox. All right. So for first time you will get the extension for the 12 months. Second time you will get the extension for the 24 month, and third time any organizations or startup ecosystem will get the extension for the 36 months. So this is the idea which has given by the Indian government to like if any company wanted to work, they have to use the sandbox technology and sandbox concept and utilize keep utilizing the personal data and sensitive personal data within their framework. Right. This is the one of the biggest concern for the cross-border data transfer. This is the biggest concern. It's coming from from the any big MNC, from the Cisco, Google, Facebook, because Indian data protection will say when the data being transferred out, you have to have a replica, you have to mirror copy in India. You have to have a data center out here in India. Thereafter, you can transfer the sensitive data out from the India, right? Uh, so this is giving one of the opportunity also for the India to boom their economy. Like when you say you have to have a mirror copy out in India, right? Like you have to create a good data center for that, right? And it for the big MNC like what I said, like Cisco, anything Google and all, for them is the compliance burden. They have to spend a massive amount to have a same infrastructure out in India. So that's where lots of MNC has shown the register for the Indian data protection bill not to be passed. But when this bill is going to be passed, India also going to have a same like SSC. India version of SSC is standard contractual clauses, and India version of BCR, binding corporate rule, like where you can see the intra-group can transfer the data from one country to other country, like Google India can transfer to the Google Europe, Google US. So similar way, the Indian government also is talking about to when the data being transferred from India to any other part of world. But I put the forward like uh, the concern which is being raised by the all the MNCs. DPO, DPOs, all this significant data fiduciaries has to have their point to the DPO, which is mandatory in the Indian data protection bill. But one good thing which is Indian data protection bill says anybody can be a DPO in India. But DPO need to be positions in India. But when we talk about the GDPR says DPO should not have conflict of interest. Like conflict of interest, when I says IT persons, legal persons, HR department people cannot be a DPO because they have their some personal conflict where will be conflicting within the DPO department. So generally, always GDPR says you have to have an outsourced DPO from the outside. But India will say anybody can be the data protection officers in India. So this is the one good thing or bad thing, whatever you think. But this is the recommendation has been given by the JPC in the Indian Data Protection Bill. Any questions? Perfect. Okay. In the consent manager, India data protection will talk about the consent manager also. So you have to have appoint one consent manager, or you have to have a technology. Whereas because the consent is one of the major valid reason has given to process the data out in India. On the basis of consent, also you can process out the data. Uh, right. So the consent, like when you got the consent from the data subject to process their data or data principal. So if somebody asks you to opt out their data, so how frequently you have to use to the data subject rights. For that, you have to have a internal consent management or you have a CMP consent management platform, which you can utilize and fulfill to the consumer rights using the consent manager. Data auditors, this is not there in the GDPR. India also got one concept called the data auditors. So data protection authority going to impanel certain auditors who is going to audit every organization annually, and they are going to give the data trust score to the organizations. Having said that, what score you are falling right now. And this is the mandatory compliance from the Indian data protection bill. However, this is not in the GDPR. Uh, so, and thereafter the third is called data breach. It's exactly the same copy they have copied to the GDPR. They have made the accountable to the data fiduciary, data processors, and you have to report to any personal data breach within the 72 hours to the data protection authority. Right. Any questions so far? Perfect. Okay. Now we'll talk about something which is our data protection we'll talk about in advance, uh, which is not in the GDPR. One is like testing and certification of the hardware devices. So the hardware devices which is being manufactured out in India need to be certified from the authority, which is going to be built out here in India, like set up a dedicated testing lab or facility and establish mechanism to provide formal certifications of integrity, trustworthiness, and security of hardware and software IoT devices. AI in case the device does not meet the specified standard of the data security approach, the DPA to take the action against to the manufacturer. So you have to apply a DPA for the certification. And once the Data Protection Authority approved your device, and thereafter you can take it out in the market. So this is the one which is not there in the GDPR. Now I talk about something consumer rights, like we have something called a data portability in India bill. Similar way there in the Europe GDPR as well, but India bill has some constraint here, like data portability of the data can only be denied on the ground of technical feasibility. So here data fiduciary can deny your data portability, like you have given a data to or taken a SIM from the Airtel and tomorrow you wanted to port your SIM to the Vodafone. So they can deny on the basis of technical feasibility. And other aspect I talk about the data portability seems very one word, but data portability is one of the huge concept when you start implementing. Like you have to collect all the data where all in all nodes being used. Like you have a server, you have a mail server, you have a file server. Everywhere you have flown the data, right? And now somebody just straight away came and asked, you can just give my data. I would like to port my data from here to another vendor. So it's a quite tedious job to collect entire data from every places and thereafter hand over to the data, and that too in the machine learning format, right? So it is a quite obvious a massive burden to the any industry or any organizations who is going to implement the data portability as a consumer right. Huge investment. You have to have a DSR, data subject request access mechanism in place to meet this compliance. The similar way, right to correction and erasure. It is exactly the same like in the GDPR. Uh, any data subject can request for the correction and erasure. You have to adhere. And right to be forgotten. Here, our data protection will have a one-step advance as per the GDPR. So if somebody has requested to forgotten my data in India, it is straight away it not possible to any organization to remove your data. Sometime in some of the scenario, you need to get the approval from the Data Protection Authority to remove out your data. So that's where one of the challenge. Uh, and other aspect which is none of the will talk about in the world, right, of disease, like the will system in India, like someone, some parents dead and before dying, they can will their property to their children and somebody else. So here also, like whatever the digital data you have Facebook account, LinkedIn account, anything you can will out to anybody. To right of disease has given in India data protections bill one of the advanced. So anybody else once somebody's data something happen, uh, your uh, I mean will person can process out your data, right? So these are the consumer rights has been given into the data protections bill in India. Any questions? Are I either you guys are understanding everything or nothing?
It's fine, Saurabh.
Okay, perfect. So this is last slide, which is talk about the data localizations. That's where also lots of pressure has been created from the lots of MNC in India. Uh, India will talk about the critical data and sensitive personal data need to be local out here in India. So that's where I was saying data localization is the concept where is give the opportunity also to the government to have a lot more data centers. But it's a problem also for the Indian government, like the country like India, whereas you see the temperature is sometimes a 45-degree, 35-degree power cut is a problem. So when you're talking about the data localizations, you have to provide a continuous power supply, give a proper space to create a data centers out in India. And this is the another aspect. If you see the another lens from the IMNC, this is a big burden for them to have another data center out in India. That's where they resist. They don't want to. This clause has to be added in the Indian data protection bill, because if this will goes in the same format, then they have to have their local server, and after a mirror copy only you can transfer out to any other country, right? Penalties like in India is talk about the case to case basis penalties there. Uh, the straight away, if you talk about in the penalty, our data protection bill says for the maximum penalty is a 15 crore and minimum penalty is the 5 crore, 2% of annual turnover and 4% of annual turnover of the 15 crore. But in the recommendations, the Parliament commentary has recommended it has to go on the case to case basis. Like somewhere you see the gravity is very high and the personal data, sensitive personal data will breach out. So the penalty should be much. And if you see the gravity is less, then penalty should be less, right? So I think this is the only 8 slide I have taken out main point to talk about. Now over to you, audience. Any questions? I think I finished in the 30 minutes only.
Saurabh,
yeah.
No, regarding the penalty, you said no, like it is depends upon various scenario.
Yeah.
So will it be like we, in our scenario, we are having small enterprise, medium enterprise, large scale, or small and medium. So the law will be applicable or categorized in the same level, depending upon the size of the company and the revenue they make.
Yes. And if you're a small organization, you just a startup, and you don't have revenue, even 15 crore revenue, right? So how can be the penalties be 15 crore? So that's where the parliamentary committee and the parliamentary, I mean the member has given the dissent note saying that it cannot be straight away 15 crore for all the some mid-size, small size industry, right? So that's where I say it is a case to case basis.
Okay, thanks, Saurabh.
Yeah. Any question about your consumer rights, your data subject right, data principal rights? Going forward, you will call a data principal as per our bill. So you have to think about data principal rights. So anything, any questions here? We have been working a lot. My team also working, so we know how tough to implement each and every. Just one word says data portability, but when you go to implement this, all like take a month together to implement, and given it some I'm like GDPR says 30 days. If you talk about the US, they given 45 days to comply one of the data subject request. India also says given a 30 days to comply any of the data subject rights, right? But this one thing, see, lots of resistance we are getting from the ecosystem. But the one thing which is very good is going to be for the country like us. It is going to give a confidence to the consumers and the data subject are either data principal and accountability, and the organization need to be accountable when they're processing their data. So it's going to give one win-win situation for both of us. So you gain the trust as a data subject. You will gain the trust of where are your data is being processed out, right? now India is a free flow. Anybody can process out any data. You see lots of crime happening over the social media, right? And these guys are not accountable as like they are accountable in the Europe and the US, right? So it's going to give a transparency of and accountability is going to create in the near future. Yeah. Varun is there? No.
Hi, Saurabh. I have
Yeah.
one question. Do you know
Yeah.
who's going to be enforcing this law? Any information regarding that?
Yeah. See, as I said, I will go my first slide. So these are good questions. See, I wanted to make this conversation to understand everybody what is the pro and cons is going to be happen with the data protection bill. So this bill is says once the data protection bill will pass. Just give me a moment, please. This will says when this data protection will pass, you will give a 24-month time, and who going to enforce is the data protection authority. So government is going to create a data protection authority, which probably will be here in Delhi, and so that is going to enforce to everybody this DPA, which is called DPA, Data Protection Authority. So who is going to enforce entire this clauses and all?
Okay.
Yeah. And thereafter you will be having a tribunal also, data protections tribunal. So if you feel any organization has not done justice with your data and they have breached your personal data and you wanted to sue that company, you wanted to take them in the court, so you can file your case into the this first you have to file the case in the Data Protection Authority, and thereafter, if you're not happy with the DPA judgment, then you have to go into the here appellate tribunal, and you can file the case in appellate tribunal. And appellate tribunal has the same power as a high court. So after that, you can only move to the high court. I mean lower court. So appellate tribunal is as equal as a lower court, and thereafter you directly go to the high court, and thereafter Supreme Court.
Also, the Data Protection Authority, their rules and the scope of their powers have not been defined yet.
Not yet. Once the bill become a law, then this is going to be much clear, the picture, how the Data Protection Authority is going to function, what are their powers, and how this is Central Data Protection Authority going to be to connect it with the state wise, like we have a 28 state here in India, right? So every state has to have their own DPA, Data Protection Authority. So yeah, some ministry has to be created who is going to coordinate with the DPA. So that has not had been very clear so far. But once the bill will pass, let's see how things are going to work.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Guys, any questions? How this bill is going to affect you? Please ask. Feel free to ask. I think I wanted to make this session very interactive, whereas you can understand how this bill is going to impact you as a citizen, as an employee.
Hi, sir.
Hello.
Yeah, please.
Saurabh?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay, so my question is a very general question. Like already now, a lot of people would be having our personal data. Like every day we get calls from charity organizations or things like that. They'll be calling us. So once this law is enforced, should they erase their database? Is it like that, or can they keep the data they have till then?
No. So you're talking about the charity company who is calling
No,
you.
I'm talking about anybody who right now has access to our personal information, like right now. But once the law is enforced, maybe they wouldn't take more data, they wouldn't buy data, but they already have it with them.
Yes. So if they already have it with them, they have to discard the data, and they have to, as I said, they have to follow the compliance within 24 months. They have to implement a data protections. Uh, I mean, what you call guidelines. They have to comply with the Indian privacy law, right? And Indian privacy law says whatever the old data you have to put forward a data minimization. So you have to discard the data. And only if, like, as an individual, like you said, the charity, if I have given my consent, then you can hold my data. Otherwise, until unless I give my consent, you have to discard my data. So everybody need to, once the bill will become a law, everybody need to follow the compliance, and they have to adhere with the Indian privacy law.
Okay, now there are certain apps, right? Like we have to give the information only, then we can get into the app.
Right.
It's like we have no choice. So there we are not given we are not given a choice. Like we are
Yes.
forced on doing that. Like we have to do it. So that is it against the law that we are talking here, or?
Yes, absolutely. So these all the against the law, and this is the something. India is a free market now, and this is what, how dare they are giving the forcefully they are collecting my data, right? So this is called a forcefully business. So if you wanted to use their app, they're saying you have to allow you have to give these other permissions. Only thereafter they give you the access. So this is not going to happen once the law will become passed. So only we have to give the consent for the time being what we needed, right? And for the, like any application, either app you are going to access for the moment, like one thing, like you suppose for the one you wanted to click the photographs, or you wanted to scan the any document. For that moment, you have to just give the permissions, and thereafter you have to just opt out. So they have to respect or abide with your consent, and they have to follow the compliance. So this is not going to happen once the law will pass.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
So they have to
Saurabh.
comply. Everybody need to comply once the law. So this is how people doing in India. This is how you see this all this big MNC. Like I said, the Facebook also very resistant. Uh, uh, anybody like YouTube, without permission, they are always targeting you. Even you see this Amazon. Anything you go on the Google and search, and thereafter you start getting notification. You go and just you will see that message already there, and like they are tracking you out. You have searched yesterday this. So this is happening in India. But once the law will become reality, this is not going to happen. Everybody has to abide with the law.
Okay, okay. Thanks, Saurabh.
Yeah.
Hello, Saurabh. Can I ask you a question?
Please, please.
Yeah, just to
Please.
clarify, no ministry has yet been created for this purpose, right? For the implementation of the bill once it becomes an act.
No, there is a call. There is a ministry which is called
Electronics
electronics.
Electronics and Information Technology.
Right, right. So they are
Yeah.
taking care, and that the ministry only is working to pass this bill. So there is already the
Okay.
ministry. But since I'm a lawyer graduate, so I know how the legal framework works in India.
Okay.
So ministry is something is not going to play any role here. They have to go and create a data protection authority of
Authority.
India. Yeah,
Okay.
and they are going to appoint one data protections officer or DPA. Right?
DPO.
Any
Yeah.
retired judge, any retired judge might be the data protection officers there in the DPA,
Okay.
right? And
Retired judge
that
of the High Court or Supreme Court?
anyone, I think anybody from the Supreme Court
Okay, anyone from
might
the
be,
Supreme Court.
yeah.
Okay.
And thereafter they're going to create a tribunal also,
Okay, the
right?
appellate tribunal. Yeah.
Yes, where you can file your cases,
Okay.
right? And state-wise, I think state-wise, if they are not going to have a DPA, then going to connect with their ministry. I think Electronic and Communication Ministry
So they'll
office.
be rerouting back to the one at the center.
Yes, absolutely. That's how it's going to happen.
Okay. Thank you, Saurabh.
Yeah, yeah, perfectly fine. Any other questions? Feel free to ask, guys. This is a free forum. If not, then Neetu, any question from your side?
Nothing, Saurabh.
Okay.
Nothing from my end.
So if not, we have blocked the session till 11:45 only. Okay, and I think thank you so much everybody for joining.